Most people hear Jesus say the kingdom is within you and nod politely, then immediately return to seeking answers outside themselves. They pray to a distant God somewhere in the heavens. They beg for intervention from above. They wait for external circumstances to shift before they can experience peace, health, or abundance in their lives. But Joel Goldsmith discovered something that changes everything about how you approach spirituality and life itself. When Jesus said the kingdom is within, he was not speaking poetically or using beautiful metaphors to inspire followers. He was revealing the most practical, powerful spiritual law in existence that governs all of reality. This is not philosophy for intellectual discussion. This is the actual mechanics of how reality operates at the deepest consciousness level. The kingdom within is not a future destination or a reward for good behavior after years of spiritual practice. It is the present, living, active presence of God already established in your consciousness right now. Everything you have been desperately seeking outside yourself, every solution you have been chasing in the external world, has always been within you, complete and perfect, waiting not to be created or developed or earned, but simply to be recognized and realized through spiritual awareness and understanding. Here is what Joel taught that most spiritual teachers completely miss in their approach to transformation. The kingdom within is not something you build slowly over time, or develop through decades of practice, or earn through good deeds and perfect behavior. It is already complete, already perfect, already fully functioning in your consciousness. Your only work, your single responsibility in this spiritual journey, is to stop seeking the kingdom elsewhere and turn your attention inward to what already exists in fullness. This shift in focus is the entire transformation. You are not trying to become something new. You are recognizing what has always been true. When you understand this deeply in your bones, something fundamental shifts in your entire being and approach to life. You stop the exhausting search for solutions in the external world of people, circumstances, and conditions. You stop begging, pleading, and desperately manipulating circumstances to achieve what you think you need for happiness. Instead, you begin to live from the kingdom within as your foundation and source. You make decisions from that inner knowing rather than external pressure. You respond to challenges from that inner peace rather than reactive fear. You create from that inner abundance rather than desperate lack. Joel Goldsmith spent decades proving this principle through thousands of documented healing experiences around the world. He watched terminal illnesses dissolve when people stopped seeking healing from outside sources like doctors, practitioners, or techniques, and recognized the perfect kingdom of health already established within their consciousness. He observed profound financial transformations when individuals ceased the frantic pursuit of supply from external channels, jobs, and opportunities, and rested in the understanding that infinite abundance flows continuously from the kingdom within their own being. The outer circumstances then rearrange themselves naturally to reflect this inner realization. Relationships healed dramatically when people stopped trying to change, fix, or control others, and instead dwelt consistently in the kingdom of love and wholeness within themselves. Careers flourished when individuals operated from their inner guidance rather than following external pressure, expectations, and conventional pathways that felt wrong. Every single area of life transformed from the inside out when people made this shift. Not through effort, struggle, or manipulation of external conditions, but through simple recognition of what was already true in the invisible realm of consciousness, where all reality originates and finds its source. The reason this principle is so revolutionary and life-changing is because it reverses everything you have been taught about how life actually works. You were taught to analyze problems carefully, strategize complex solutions, and take massive external action to force changes. Society conditions you to believe transformation requires external effort. Joel reveals that true transformation happens when you first recognize the perfect kingdom within your consciousness, and then watch as external reality naturally conforms to that inner recognition without force. The outer world is always reflecting your inner consciousness. Change consciousness, and the outer world must follow. This does not mean you become passive, lazy, or stop taking action in the physical world. It means your actions flow from inner wisdom and guidance, rather than from fear, lack, or desperation. You move through life guided by the still, small voice within, rather than being tossed around by external opinions. When you truly understand why Jesus emphasized the kingdom within, You stop living as a beggar, seeking crumbs from the external world. You live as royalty who knows the infinite kingdom is your permanent inner reality, and everything you genuinely need flows naturally from that inexhaustible source within your own consciousness. Let me share what happened to a woman named Margaret, who had been battling chronic debilitating pain for 7 long years. She had tried every medical treatment available, every alternative therapy, every healing modality that offered hope. Nothing provided lasting relief. She was physically and emotionally exhausted from the endless search. When she encountered Joel's teaching about the kingdom within, something clicked deep in her understanding. She stopped seeking healing from doctors, practitioners, techniques, or external sources entirely. Instead, she spent time each day quietly recognizing the perfect kingdom of health already established in her consciousness as spiritual truth. Not hoping for healing to come someday, not visualizing or affirming future health, but simply acknowledging what was already true in the realm of consciousness. She recognized that perfect health existed in the kingdom within, regardless of what her physical body was currently experiencing or what symptoms were manifesting. Within 3 weeks, the pain began to diminish noticeably. Within 2 months, it was completely gone and never returned. But here is what matters most in this story. Margaret did not attribute her healing to a miracle from outside herself. She understood that she had simply stopped blocking the perfect health that was always present. Then there was David, a businessman facing complete bankruptcy after years of building his company. His business was drowning in overwhelming debt. Creditors were circling aggressively. Every external strategy had failed miserably. He was desperate, terrified, and could not sleep at night worrying about losing everything he had worked to build. Traditional business thinking said he needed to work harder, find new investors quickly, or drastically cut costs to have any chance of survival. He was following all the conventional advice but sinking deeper. The external approach was not working no matter how much effort he applied to solving the problems. Joel's principle turned his entire approach completely around in a radical way. David began each morning sitting in the recognition that infinite supply flows continuously from the kingdom within his own consciousness. He stopped the frantic external scrambling and desperate attempts to force solutions. He made business decisions from inner guidance rather than panic. Over the next 6 months, unexpected opportunities appeared from directions he never considered. New partnerships formed naturally. Income streams emerged that he had not even imagined existed. His business not only survived the crisis, but thrived beyond his previous success. David learned that when you live from the kingdom within, the external world reorganizes itself. Another powerful example was Rachel, whose marriage was collapsing after 15 years together. Years of professional counseling had not helped improve the relationship. She and her husband were emotionally distant, resentful, constantly arguing over small things. She was convinced that he needed to change, that if only he would listen and improve, their relationship could heal. All her efforts and energy focused on trying to fix him, make him understand, change his behavior. She read books about communication, tried new approaches to get through to him, but nothing worked. The harder she tried to change him, the worse the relationship became. She was exhausted and ready to give up. When Rachel discovered the principle of the kingdom within, she stopped trying to change her husband entirely. This felt counterintuitive at first. Instead, she dwelt consistently in the kingdom of love and wholeness within her own consciousness. She recognized that the perfect relationship already existed in the spiritual realm as truth. Remarkably, within weeks, her husband began to soften naturally without Rachel saying a word about change. The distance between them dissolved gradually. Communication improved organically. Rachel learned that when you live from the kingdom within, you stop trying to manipulate external circumstances and instead allow your inner realization to transform everything around you without force. These stories reveal the consistent pattern Joel Goldsmith discovered through decades of intensive spiritual practice and healing work with thousands of people. When you genuinely understand that the kingdom is within, you stop the exhausting battle with external conditions. You cease begging for change from outside sources that have no real power. This is not overnight magic or instant miracles that happen without any process. Most people experience gradual transformation over weeks and months as they deepen their understanding and consistently apply this principle. There are moments of doubt, frustrating setbacks, and challenging periods. This is the realistic path of spiritual growth and development. But those who persist in recognizing the kingdom within, who return to this truth daily despite appearances, consistently report that their entire life begins to reorganize from the inside out. The shift happens not through willpower or positive thinking techniques, but through genuine realization of what is already true in consciousness. If these transformation stories inspire you to explore this teaching further, like this video to help others discover these life-changing principles, subscribe for more Joel Goldsmith wisdom and practical techniques, and comment what healing journey resonated most deeply with your own experience and spiritual path. Now let me give you a practical technique Joel taught for consciously accessing the kingdom within every single day. This is not complicated or requiring years of training, but it does require sincerity and consistency in application. Begin each day with 15 to 20 minutes of inner silence before the demands of daily life consume your attention. This is not meditation in the traditional sense of emptying your mind or achieving special states. It is a conscious recognition of the divine presence already established within you right now. Sit comfortably and acknowledge that the kingdom of God is within your consciousness at this very moment, not tomorrow, not after you become more spiritual. Recognize that infinite wisdom, unconditional love, perfect health, and unlimited abundance are already present in this inner kingdom as established spiritual truth. Your work is not to create them through effort or earn them through good behavior, but simply to recognize what already exists in fullness within your own consciousness. As thoughts about problems, fears, worries, or needs arise during this quiet time, gently return your attention to the kingdom within. Do not fight the thoughts or feel guilty for having them. Simply acknowledge that the solution to every perceived problem already exists in the perfect kingdom of your consciousness waiting to be recognized. Joel taught another powerful practice he called resting in the Word throughout your entire day. As you move through daily activities, when challenges arise or difficult situations present themselves, pause briefly and internally acknowledge a spiritual truth, not as a magic formula to manipulate reality, but as recognition of what is already true. For example, if fear suddenly arises about a situation, you might silently recognize that perfect love already exists in the kingdom within, and perfect love casts out all fear. If financial lack appears threatening, you recognize that infinite abundance flows continuously from the inexhaustible source within your consciousness, regardless of external bank balances. If illness threatens your peace or physical symptoms appear concerning, you acknowledge the perfect health already established in consciousness as spiritual truth. This is not denying the external appearance or pretending problems do not exist. It is recognizing a deeper reality that exists beyond physical appearances in the realm of consciousness. You are training your attention to rest in the kingdom within rather than being hypnotized by external conditions that constantly change. Over time, with consistent practice, this approach becomes automatic and natural. You naturally live from inner recognition, rather than outer reaction to whatever circumstances present themselves in daily life. A third technique Joel emphasized was what he called listening for the still, small voice within. The kingdom within is not silent, passive, or inactive. It is constantly communicating guidance, wisdom, and clear direction for every situation you face. But most people are too busy with mental noise and external distractions to hear it. Create intentional spaces in your day specifically for inner listening without agenda or demands. This might be 5 quiet minutes between activities, a contemplative moment before important decisions, or regular periods of contemplative silence where you simply listen. In these moments, ask your inner guidance for direction on specific situations. Then actually listen, without filling the silence with your own thoughts, ideas, or plans. Not listening for dramatic voices or mystical visions, but for gentle knowing that arises naturally. The guidance from the kingdom within often comes as a subtle sense of knowing, a feeling of rightness about a particular direction, quiet certainty about which path to take. Learn to trust this inner voice over external opinions, logical analysis that misses spiritual truth, or fearful thoughts that create worst-case scenarios. As you follow this guidance consistently over time, you discover it leads you perfectly through every situation, even when the path does not make logical sense to your rational mind. Joel also taught the essential practice of living fully in the now moment as your permanent state of awareness. The kingdom within exists only in the present moment. It is not in memories of the past or worries about the future. When your attention scatters across time, you lose contact with the kingdom that is always here, always now. Bring your full attention to whatever you are doing in this exact moment without mental division. Whether working, eating, walking, or talking with someone, be completely present rather than mentally rehearsing the past or planning the future. This present moment awareness is the doorway to experiencing the kingdom within consistently. The divine presence is here now in this moment, not in some future moment when conditions improve or problems resolve. Waiting for better circumstances before you can experience the kingdom within is missing the entire point. The kingdom is available right now, regardless of what is happening externally in your life circumstances. This practice transforms ordinary activities into sacred experiences infused with meaning. You discover that the kingdom within enriches every moment with depth, peace, and fullness when you are truly present. You stop postponing your life, waiting for better circumstances to finally arrive. You recognize that fullness of life is available now through the kingdom within. But let me be completely honest about the real challenges you will face when applying this principle consistently. The biggest obstacle that stops most people is doubt that arises when external circumstances seem overwhelming. You will have moments when problems seem so massive that the idea of an inner kingdom feels like fantasy or denial of reality. This doubt is completely normal and happens to everyone on this path, even advanced practitioners. When doubt arises, do not fight it, resist it, or feel guilty about experiencing it. Simply acknowledge the doubt without giving it power, then gently return your attention to the recognition of the kingdom within as your foundation and truth. Doubt is just a thought passing through consciousness, like clouds passing through sky. It has no actual power to diminish the reality of the inner kingdom. The kingdom exists whether you doubt it or believe it, whether you feel it or not. Your doubt does not change spiritual truth, only your experience of it. Another significant challenge is impatience with the process of transformation. You want immediate results, instant dramatic transformation like the stories you hear. But genuine realization usually deepens gradually over time through consistent practice. Some people experience rapid shifts, others notice subtle changes over weeks and months of dedicated application. You will also face the challenge of deeply ingrained old mental habits that have been programmed since childhood. You have spent years, perhaps decades of your life, looking outside yourself for solutions to every problem. These external seeking patterns are deeply ingrained in your consciousness and nervous system through repetition. You will catch yourself automatically returning to the old way of external seeking, manipulation of circumstances, and exhausting struggle to force changes. This happens to everyone initially. The old patterns are like well-worn paths that your mind follows automatically without conscious thought. Breaking these patterns requires awareness and gentle persistence. When you notice this happening during your day, be genuinely gentle with yourself rather than self-critical. Awareness itself is the first essential step to lasting change. Simply acknowledge that you slipped into old patterns of external seeking, then consciously redirect your attention to the kingdom within as your true source and foundation. Each time you do this redirecting, you strengthen the new pattern and weaken the old one. Gradually over time, living from the inner kingdom becomes your natural default state rather than something you have to remember to do. Some days will feel easy and clear. Other days will feel difficult and confusing. This is natural rhythm. Another significant challenge is resistance from people around you who do not understand this principle. When you stop participating in collective worry, fear, and external seeking that everyone engages in, others may feel uncomfortable with your different approach. They may accuse you of being unrealistic, irresponsible, or in denial about serious problems. Family members might criticize you for not worrying enough about situations they think deserve anxiety. Coworkers might judge your calm presence during crises as lack of appropriate concern. Friends might think you have joined a cult or lost touch with reality. This social pressure can shake your commitment to living from the kingdom within. Stand firm in your understanding without needing to convince others or defend your approach. You are not responsible for making people understand this principle or approve of your spiritual path. Your only responsibility is to live from the kingdom within yourself and allow your transformed life to be your testimony. As your life transforms over time through this practice, some people will become curious and ask genuine questions about what changed in you. Others will continue to disagree and criticize your approach. Both responses are completely fine. Remember that Jesus faced the same resistance when he taught this radical principle to his followers. The final challenge I want to address directly is the subtle temptation to use this principle as a technique for getting what you want. The ego is clever and will try to turn the kingdom within into a tool for manifesting desires, controlling outcomes, and improving your personal situation to satisfy wants. This ego approach misses the entire point of the teaching. The kingdom within is not a means to an end or a technique for manifestation. It is the end itself, the fullness you have been seeking. When you genuinely recognize and live from the kingdom within, you discover that what you thought you desperately wanted often dissolves. You realize you already have everything you genuinely need in consciousness. The desperate seeking stops naturally because you feel complete in yourself. This does not mean your external life stays exactly the same or nothing improves. In fact, your life often improves dramatically in ways you could not have planned or imagined. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak deeply to your heart and resonate with your spiritual journey, like to support this transformative content, subscribe for advanced spiritual practices and weekly teachings, and comment, which obstacle are you ready to transform right now in your life? Now let me show you specifically how to apply the kingdom within principle to different life situations you face. When facing a health challenge or physical symptoms, the old conventional approach is to focus intensely on the symptoms, research treatments obsessively, and fight the disease with all your energy and attention. This keeps your attention concentrated on the problem, which actually reinforces its reality in your consciousness. Where attention goes, energy flows. Focusing on illness strengthens the experience of illness in your consciousness. This is not to blame yourself for being sick, but to understand the mechanics of how consciousness operates in creating experience. The kingdom within approach is radically different in every way. You acknowledge the symptoms honestly without denying their current appearance, but without giving them ultimate power or reality. Then you turn your attention away from symptoms to the perfect health already established in the kingdom of your consciousness as spiritual truth. You recognize that in spiritual truth beyond physical appearances, you are whole, complete, and functioning perfectly right now. This does not mean you reject medical care or ignore practical wisdom. It means you do not give the illness ultimate reality or final word. You treat it as temporary appearance that has no power to diminish your true nature. When dealing with financial pressure or money concerns, most people become consumed with worry, frantically seeking new income sources and feeling trapped by scarcity consciousness. Every thought revolves around lack, what is missing, bills that cannot be paid. This mental state focused on lack actually blocks abundance from flowing. The constant focus on what you do not have creates more experience of not having. Consciousness is always demonstrating itself in outer form. If consciousness is dominated by lack, the outer experience will be lack. This is the law of consciousness that cannot be broken, only understood and worked with consciously. The kingdom within approach transforms everything about your relationship with money and supply. You recognize that infinite supply is flowing from the inexhaustible source within your consciousness right now, in this moment. Not in the future after you find the right job or opportunity, but now as present reality in consciousness. Abundance is the very nature of the kingdom within, regardless of external bank balances or current financial circumstances. From this recognition as your foundation, you make financial decisions from inner guidance, rather than from fear or desperation. You may take the same practical actions, but your internal state is completely different and attracts different results. In relationships, the kingdom within principle stops you from demanding that others change to meet your needs and expectations. Most relationship problems stem from believing that your happiness, peace, and fulfillment depend on someone else behaving differently than they currently behave. This creates exhausting cycles for everyone involved. When you make others responsible for your inner state, you give away all your power. You become a victim of their choices, moods, and behaviors. No one can consistently make you happy from outside yourself. This is impossible and unfair to expect. Yet this is what most people do unconsciously in their relationships. When you live from the kingdom within, you recognize that love, peace, and fulfillment already exist in your consciousness, independent of anyone else's behavior. You stop making others responsible for your inner state or happiness. This does not mean you tolerate abuse or stay in unhealthy situations that harm you. It means you are complete within yourself first, and then you relate to others from that inner fullness rather than from neediness and lack. From this completeness, your relationships transform naturally without force. You attract people who resonate with your inner state. Existing relationships either improve dramatically or gracefully end to make room for what matches your consciousness. For career and life purpose, most people look externally for validation, success markers, and approval from others to feel worthwhile. They measure their value by titles, income levels, and recognition from peers or society. This creates constant anxiety because external measures are always shifting and never provide lasting satisfaction. There is always someone more successful, someone earning more, someone with a better title or more recognition. The external comparison game is unwinnable and exhausting. You sacrifice your authentic path trying to meet external expectations and definitions of success that may not fit your unique purpose. The kingdom within approach grounds your work in inner guidance rather than external validation or social approval. You ask the still small voice within what you are genuinely meant to contribute with your unique gifts. You follow the inner knowing even when it does not make logical sense or match conventional success measures. People who operate from this foundation often find themselves in unexpected careers that deeply fulfill them at soul level. Their work becomes an expression of the kingdom within, rather than a desperate attempt to prove their worth or secure their survival. Success comes naturally as byproduct of living authentically from inner truth. As you deepen your understanding of the kingdom within over time, something remarkable happens to your entire perception of life. You stop dividing life artificially into spiritual moments and ordinary moments. You recognize that every single activity, every conversation, every decision is an opportunity to live from the kingdom within your consciousness. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the divine presence within. Business meetings become opportunities to listen for inner guidance about decisions and directions. Difficult conversations become moments to rest in the peace that exists permanently in the kingdom of your consciousness, regardless of external conflict or tension. There is no separation between sacred and secular activities, because everything is infused with the divine presence when you are aware. Driving your car, preparing meals, working at your desk, all become sacred when done from recognition of the kingdom within. This is living the mystical life that Joel taught as the ultimate goal. Not withdrawing from the world into monasteries or ashrams, but moving through the world while remaining constantly rooted in the kingdom within as your foundation. You engage fully with practical responsibilities and daily life while never losing touch with the inner source. This balance transforms both your inner experience and outer effectiveness in the world. At this advanced stage of practice, you also develop what Joel called spiritual discernment or inner knowing. You can feel immediately when you have slipped into external seeking versus living from the kingdom within. There is a distinct, recognizable difference in the quality of your inner state that becomes obvious with experience. External seeking feels tense, effortful, anxious, like swimming upstream against current. Living from within feels peaceful, flowing naturally, guided by something beyond your personal effort. Your body itself can feel the difference. Tension versus ease. Struggle versus flow, contraction versus expansion in your energy. This discernment allows you to course correct quickly in any moment. The instant you notice tension or struggle arising, you recognize you have forgotten the kingdom within and return to external seeking. You pause wherever you are, acknowledge the perfect presence already established in your consciousness, and return to that foundation. This becomes an automatic inner adjustment that keeps you aligned throughout your day. You also develop the ability to recognize when others are speaking from their own inner kingdom versus when they are lost in external appearances and surface-level thinking. This helps you know whose guidance to receive and whose opinions to gracefully ignore without judgment. The ultimate realization of the kingdom within is what Joel called dying daily to the human sense of self or separate identity. This sounds dramatic and frightening, but it simply means releasing the limited, small identity that believes it is separate from God, that must fight for survival, that depends on external circumstances for fulfillment. As this limited false self dies through recognition of truth, Your true identity as the kingdom of God in expression is gradually revealed. You discover you are not a separate person seeking connection to the divine source. You are the divine presence individualized, the kingdom of God made manifest in unique human form. This is your true nature that has always existed, but was hidden by false identification with the limited human sense of self. This realization does not make you arrogant or separate from others. Instead, you recognize the same spiritual truth in every person you meet, whether they are aware of it yet or not. Everyone is the kingdom of God, individualized and expressing uniquely, whether they know this truth or not. Your work is to see this truth consistently in yourself and others, regardless of external appearances or behaviors that seem to contradict this spiritual reality. This vision itself helps awaken others to their true nature. So here is what actually happens when you truly understand why Jesus said the kingdom is within you. Your entire life reorganizes around this central truth as your foundation. You stop the exhausting, endless search for fulfillment, healing, abundance, and love in the external world where it can never be permanently found. You recognize that everything you have been desperately seeking is already present in consciousness, waiting only to be recognized and lived from. This is not the end of challenges or difficulties in daily life. Life continues with its natural ups and downs, changes and uncertainties. But your fundamental relationship to life is completely transformed. You are no longer at the mercy of circumstances or controlled by external conditions. You are rooted in the unshakable kingdom within, and from that solid foundation, you move through whatever life brings with peace, wisdom, and power that does not depend on anything external to yourself. If your spiritual understanding expanded through these Joel Goldsmith secrets and practical teachings, like this video now, subscribe for more transformative spiritual content weekly, and comment, "I am transformed," to confirm your commitment to this new path of living from the kingdom within. When Jesus declared, "All is fulfilled in me," he wasn't making a religious claim about his unique divinity. He was revealing the most transformational secret of spiritual consciousness that Joel Goldsmith spent decades teaching. This statement is actually an invitation for you to discover the same consciousness within yourself. Most people miss this completely. The word fulfilled in Aramaic carries a meaning far deeper than completion. It means made whole, brought to fullness, and accomplished in consciousness. Jesus was describing a state of being where nothing external is needed because everything already exists in spiritual awareness. This is not theology, but practical mysticism. Here's what Joel Goldsmith discovered that changes everything. When Jesus said, "In me," he wasn't referring to his personal human identity called Jesus of Nazareth. He was speaking from the Christ consciousness, the I Am presence that exists equally in every human being. This same presence is in you right now, waiting to be recognized. Most religious teaching tells you to seek God's blessings from outside yourself. You're taught to pray for things, ask for healing, beg for provision, and hope God will respond favorably. This creates a consciousness of separation and lack. Joel Goldsmith called this the great spiritual mistake that keeps millions in bondage to limitation and suffering. The truth Jesus demonstrated is radically different. When you understand all is fulfilled in me, you stop seeking and start recognizing. You stop asking and start acknowledging. You stop begging and start resting in the awareness that infinite spiritual resources already exist in your consciousness. This shift alone transforms everything. Joel taught that this principle operates through what he called recognition prayer versus petitionary prayer. Instead of asking God for something you lack, you recognize what already is. Instead of seeking healing, you acknowledge wholeness. Instead of pursuing supply, you rest in infinite abundance that exists in consciousness before it appears in form. Let me show you how this operates practically in daily life. When you face a challenge, your conditioned mind immediately goes into seeking mode. You start asking, "What can I do? Where can I get help? How can I fix this?" This consciousness of personal effort and external dependency actually blocks the flow of spiritual good that wants to express through you. But when you pause and recognize all is fulfilled in me, something shifts. You're not denying the appearance of the problem. You're acknowledging a higher truth. You're remembering that the Christ consciousness within you already contains the solution. the healing, the provision, the wisdom. Your role is simply to be still and let it emerge. Joel Goldsmith experienced this dramatically when facing his own health crisis. Instead of frantically seeking remedies, he turned within and recognized the presence of wholeness in his consciousness. Within weeks, his condition transformed completely. He wasn't healed by external treatment, but by the recognition of what was already true in spiritual reality. The key Joel emphasized is this: you cannot add anything to your spiritual identity. You cannot become more whole, more blessed, or more divine than you already are in consciousness. The moment you try to add something, you're operating from a belief in lack. That belief itself becomes the obstacle to experiencing your already fulfilled nature. This is why Jesus never begged God for anything. He didn't pray for the Father to give him power, wisdom, or ability. He recognized that the Father and he were one, that all the Father has was already his in consciousness. This wasn't arrogance, but clarity about spiritual identity. It's the same clarity available to you right now. When you truly grasp this principle, your entire approach to life transforms. You stop manipulating circumstances and start recognizing truth. You stop efforting and start resting. You stop seeking and start acknowledging. This doesn't mean you become passive. It means you become spiritually intelligent, working from fullness rather than emptiness. Let me share what happened to Robert, a business executive who discovered this principle during a financial crisis. His company was failing, debts were mounting, and traditional solutions weren't working. Every consultant told him to work harder, strategize better, and push through, but Robert felt exhausted by the constant effort and anxiety. Then he encountered Joel Goldsmith's teaching about all is fulfilled in me. At first he thought it was spiritual bypassing, just positive thinking that ignored reality. But something drew him to experiment with it. He began taking moments throughout each day to pause and silently recognize, all that I need is already present in consciousness. The solution exists before I seek it. What happened over the next 3 months surprised even Robert. He didn't receive a sudden windfall or miracle investor. Instead, his thinking clarified. He saw business opportunities he'd previously missed. Connections formed naturally. Resources appeared through unexpected channels. His company slowly stabilized and then began growing again. But more importantly, his entire relationship with provision transformed. Or consider Elizabeth, who struggled with chronic anxiety for 15 years. She'd tried therapy, medication, meditation apps, and every self-help technique available. Some things helped temporarily, but the underlying anxiety always returned. She was exhausted from the constant battle with her own mind and emotions. When Elizabeth learned about recognizing fulfillment in consciousness rather than seeking peace externally, something clicked. She realized she'd been fighting anxiety from a position of believing something was wrong with her. Every technique was another form of seeking to fix a problem. But what if wholeness was already present beneath the anxious thoughts? She began practicing what Joel called the art of non-reaction. Instead of trying to eliminate anxiety, she would pause and recognize, peace is fulfilled in my true consciousness right now. She didn't deny the anxious feelings, but stopped giving them the power of ultimate reality. Over 6 months, the anxiety episodes decreased dramatically in frequency and intensity. More importantly, she found an unshakable center within herself. Then there's Christopher, a physician who became disillusioned with medicine's limitations. He witnessed too many patients who received perfect medical treatment yet remained sick, while others with poor prognoses mysteriously healed. He began exploring Joel Goldsmith's spiritual healing principles alongside his medical practice. Christopher started teaching his willing patients about consciousness and fulfillment. He'd explain that medical treatment addresses the body, but consciousness addresses the source. He encouraged them to recognize wholeness in their spiritual identity while receiving appropriate medical care. He never asked anyone to reject medicine, but to complement it with spiritual awareness. The results over 2 years were remarkable. Patients who engaged with both approaches showed measurably better outcomes. Their recovery times shortened, complications decreased, and their overall well-being improved. Christopher realized he was witnessing what Joel taught, that spiritual recognition doesn't replace practical action, but empowers it by changing the consciousness from which action arises. These stories illustrate something crucial that Joel Goldsmith emphasized throughout his teaching. The principle of all is fulfilled in me isn't about magical thinking or denying practical reality. It's about discovering the source of all good in consciousness itself, then allowing that consciousness to express through your practical actions and daily life. The transformation happens gradually as you practice recognition consistently. You won't suddenly become perfect or problem-free, but you'll find yourself increasingly anchored in something unchangeable within you. You'll notice that solutions appear more naturally, that you respond to challenges with greater wisdom, and that your overall experience of life shifts from seeking to recognizing. If these transformation stories inspire you to explore your own fulfilled consciousness, like this video to help others discover Joel Goldsmith's wisdom, subscribe for more mystical Christian teachings, and comment which story resonated most deeply with your own spiritual journey right now. Now let me share the complementary practices Joel Goldsmith taught to deepen your recognition of all is fulfilled in me. The first is what he called spiritual listening. This isn't listening for words or messages from God. It's resting in consciousness with an awareness that truth is already present, waiting to be recognized rather than received from outside. Here's how you practice this. Find a quiet moment and close your eyes. Instead of speaking prayers or making requests, simply rest in silence. Hold the awareness that infinite intelligence already knows everything about your situation. Your only task is to be still and receptive. Don't seek an answer. Recognize that the answer already exists in consciousness. When you practice this regularly, you'll notice something remarkable. Insights emerge naturally without effort. You'll suddenly understand things you couldn't grasp before. Solutions appear in your awareness without struggle. This happens because you're not creating anything new, but rather removing the mental static that blocks recognition of what's already present in your spiritual consciousness. The second technique Joel taught is impersonalization. This means recognizing that problems don't actually belong to your true spiritual identity. When you believe, I am sick, or I am poor, or I am anxious, you're identifying your eternal consciousness with temporary human conditions. This identification gives power to the problem. Instead, practice seeing challenges as impersonal appearances that don't touch your true nature. When anxiety appears, recognize, anxiety is appearing in experience, but it isn't my spiritual identity. When lack appears, know, limitation is a temporary appearance, but infinite abundance is fulfilled in my consciousness. This distinction is absolutely crucial. Joel discovered this principle transformed his healing work. When people came to him with diseases, he didn't see them as sick individuals needing healing. He recognized their true spiritual identity as already whole and complete. The disease was just an impersonal appearance passing through experience. This recognition in his consciousness often triggered healing in theirs. The third practice is what Joel called living by grace. This means developing the consciousness that you don't live by your personal efforts, strategies, or manipulations. You live by the grace that flows naturally from recognizing your fulfilled spiritual identity. Grace is the effortless provision that appears when you stop striving from a sense of lack. Here's the practical application. Before making decisions or taking action, pause and recognize, I am not the source of my good. The infinite consciousness I am is my source, and it contains everything needed. Then take whatever action feels natural, but from this consciousness of already having, rather than desperately needing. This doesn't make you passive or irresponsible. Actually, you often find yourself taking more inspired action. But the action comes from overflow rather than emptiness. You work from fulfillment rather than fear. You create from joy rather than desperation. The external actions may look similar, but the consciousness behind them transforms everything about their effectiveness and your experience. The fourth technique Joel emphasized is releasing human judgment. Most suffering comes from judging appearances as good or bad, then trying to get rid of bad ones and hold on to good ones. But spiritual consciousness sees through appearances to the underlying wholeness. It recognizes that what looks like limitation is often inviting you to discover deeper fulfillment. Practice this by catching yourself in judgment and asking, what if this appearance is an opportunity to recognize a deeper truth? Don't force yourself to be positive about genuinely difficult situations. Just remain open to the possibility that spiritual fulfillment can be recognized even in challenging circumstances. This openness itself becomes transformational. When you combine these 4 practices with the foundational recognition that all is fulfilled in me, you create a consciousness that Joel called Christ consciousness. Not the historical Jesus, but the awareness of spiritual identity that Jesus demonstrated. This consciousness is already in you, already complete, already fulfilled. Your spiritual work is simply removing the barriers to recognizing it. Let's address the real challenges you'll face when practicing this principle, because Joel Goldsmith was honest about the obstacles. The biggest one is what he called the testimony of the senses. Your physical senses constantly report limitation, lack, and problems. Your bank account shows a specific number. Your body shows symptoms. Your relationships show conflict. These appearances feel absolutely real. Here's what Joel taught about this challenge. You're not denying what your senses report. You're simply recognizing that sensory evidence isn't the deepest truth. Consciousness is prior to form. Spiritual reality precedes physical manifestation. When you recognize fulfillment in consciousness first, the outer forms gradually begin to reflect that inner recognition. But this takes time and consistent practice. The mistake most people make is expecting instant results, then abandoning the practice when circumstances don't immediately change. Joel emphasized, you're reconditioning years or decades of consciousness programmed with lack and limitation. Be patient with yourself. Recognize truth consistently, even when appearances contradict it. The transformation happens through persistence, not perfection. The second major challenge is what Joel called taking thought. This means trying to mentally figure out how your good will appear. You recognize all is fulfilled in me, but then your mind immediately jumps to analyzing and planning exactly how that fulfillment will manifest. This mental activity actually blocks the natural flow of spiritual good. Joel discovered that spiritual demonstration happens through paths you cannot predict or control. When you hold a rigid mental picture of how things should work out, you close yourself to the infinite ways consciousness might express. Your job is recognition and receptivity, not manipulation and control. This requires deep trust. Practice catching yourself in taking thought mode. Notice when your mind starts obsessing about the how and when. Gently return to simple recognition. The infinite knows the way. All is fulfilled in consciousness. I rest in this truth. This rest is active spiritually, even though it feels passive mentally. You're allowing consciousness to work, rather than forcing human will. The third obstacle is inconsistency. You'll have moments of clear recognition where you feel the truth of all is fulfilled in me deeply. Then life challenges hit, and you immediately forget everything. You react from fear, seek frantically for external solutions, and abandon your spiritual awareness. Joel said this is completely normal, especially in the beginning. The key is what he called practicing the presence. This means bringing yourself back to recognition multiple times throughout each day, not just in meditation or prayer time. Set reminders on your phone. Create visual cues in your environment. Use transitions between activities as triggers to pause and recognize fulfillment. Gradually, this awareness becomes more constant. Don't judge yourself harshly when you forget. Joel emphasized that spiritual growth isn't about being perfect, but about being persistent. Each time you catch yourself in fear and return to recognition, you're strengthening the new consciousness. Over months and years, you'll find yourself naturally resting in this awareness more consistently, even during challenges. The fourth challenge Joel addressed is dealing with other people's consciousness. You might be recognizing fulfillment, but people around you are operating from lack, fear, and limitation. Their consciousness can affect your experience, especially if you're emotionally close to them. This is why Joel taught about spiritual protection, not as a defense, but as clarity. Your spiritual practice must include recognizing that other people's beliefs cannot affect your true consciousness. Their fear, judgment, or negativity is their experience, not yours. You remain anchored in the recognition of all is fulfilled in me, regardless of the mental climate around you. This isn't cold or uncaring, it's spiritually intelligent. If these challenge-breaking techniques speak to your heart and you're ready to move through obstacles, like to support transformational content, subscribe for advanced Joel Goldsmith practices, and comment which obstacle you're most committed to transforming through recognition right now. Now let me show you how this principle operates in advanced scenarios that test everything. Consider Amanda, a single mother facing homelessness after losing her job. Traditional advice would focus entirely on job searching, government assistance, and family help. These practical steps are important, but Amanda also worked with the spiritual principle Joel taught. Every morning before job searching, Amanda spent 20 minutes in recognition. She didn't beg God for a job. She recognized, infinite intelligence is fulfilled in my consciousness. The perfect provision already exists. I am guided to recognize it. Then she took practical actions, but from a consciousness of already having, rather than desperately needing what she lacked. Within 6 weeks, something unexpected happened. A former colleague reached out randomly, mentioning a position that hadn't been advertised yet. Amanda got the interview and then the job. But more importantly, she discovered a spiritual principle that sustained her beyond that crisis. She learned to recognize fulfillment in consciousness before seeing it in form, and this awareness transformed her entire approach to life's challenges. Then there's Kenneth, diagnosed with a serious illness that conventional medicine said was progressive and incurable. Kenneth continued appropriate medical care, but also applied Joel's teaching about consciousness and healing. He didn't deny his diagnosis or reject treatment. He simply refused to accept it as his spiritual identity. Kenneth practiced recognizing, perfect life is fulfilled in my consciousness right now. This diagnosis is a physical appearance, not my spiritual reality. He did this alongside medical appointments, treatments, and lifestyle changes. He wasn't choosing between medicine and spirituality, but integrating both from a consciousness of wholeness rather than disease. Over 18 months, Kenneth's condition stabilized and then gradually improved. His doctors were surprised but attributed it to the treatment working better than expected. Kenneth knew something else was operating. He'd discovered what Joel taught, that consciousness precedes form, and when you consistently recognize wholeness and consciousness, the body eventually reflects that recognition. This doesn't always happen, but it happens far more often than conventional thinking allows. Consider Brian, a therapist who integrated Joel's principles into his professional practice. He worked with clients suffering severe trauma, addiction, and mental health crises. Traditional therapy helped, but Brian found that adding spiritual recognition accelerated transformation in ways that surprised him. Brian would silently recognize his clients' spiritual wholeness while they described their problems. He wasn't denying their suffering or minimizing their pain. He was holding an awareness that beneath all the trauma and dysfunction lived an untouched spiritual identity that was already fulfilled. His consciousness of their wholeness often helped them recognize it themselves. Clients frequently reported that sessions with Brian felt different than other therapy. They felt seen at a deeper level, not just as broken people needing fixing. This recognition created space for healing that went beyond technique. Brian discovered what Joel taught, that recognizing spiritual fulfillment in yourself and others creates an atmosphere where transformation happens naturally. Finally, there's Dorothy, who faced a situation many would consider hopeless. Her adult son struggled with severe addiction, had been through multiple rehabilitation programs, and nothing worked. Dorothy had tried everything: intervention, tough love, enabling, pleading, and prayer. She was emotionally and spiritually exhausted from years of heartbreak and disappointment. When Dorothy learned Joel's teaching, she realized she'd been seeing her son only as his addiction, only as the problem. She began practicing recognition differently. Instead of praying for God to fix him, she recognized his spiritual identity as already whole and free. She stopped trying to change him and started holding awareness of his true consciousness. This didn't instantly cure his addiction, but something shifted in their relationship and in him. Over 2 years, he found his own path to recovery. Dorothy couldn't prove her recognition caused his healing, but she knew her consciousness had changed. She found peace regardless of his choices, and somehow that shift in her consciousness seemed to open space for transformation in his. Now let's bring this teaching to its ultimate conclusion. The recognition that all is fulfilled in me isn't just a technique for solving problems. It's the discovery of your true spiritual identity. Joel Goldsmith taught that you aren't a human being seeking spiritual experiences. You are spiritual consciousness having a temporary human experience. This reversal changes everything. When you live from this recognition consistently, Practical life becomes an expression of consciousness rather than a desperate search for fulfillment. You still work, plan, and take action in the world, but you work from fullness rather than emptiness. You create from joy rather than fear. You give from overflow rather than depletion. This is what Jesus demonstrated throughout his ministry. The ultimate freedom Joel discovered is that nothing external can add to or take from your spiritual fulfillment. Success doesn't make you more whole. Failure doesn't make you less complete. Health doesn't increase your spiritual perfection. Illness doesn't diminish your true identity. This recognition liberates you from the tyranny of circumstances controlling your peace. Here's what this looks like practically in daily life. You wake up and before checking your phone or thinking about your day, you pause and recognize, I am the fulfilled consciousness. Everything I need is already present. This takes 30 seconds but sets the foundation for your entire day. You're not creating fulfillment. You're acknowledging what's already true. Throughout your day, you face challenges, disappointments, surprises, and opportunities. Instead of reacting from fear or grasping from lack, you pause repeatedly and return to recognition. All is fulfilled in me. This doesn't solve every problem instantly, but it keeps you anchored in spiritual awareness while you handle practical matters intelligently. At night, you review your day not with judgment, but with recognition. You acknowledge where you remembered truth and where you forgot. You don't condemn yourself for forgetting. You simply recognize again. All is fulfilled in me right now, regardless of today's experiences. This consistent practice gradually transforms your consciousness from seeking to recognizing, from lacking to resting, from striving to being. Joel Goldsmith discovered something that few spiritual teachers understood so clearly. The consciousness of fulfillment attracts fulfillment in form, not through magical thinking or manipulation, but through spiritual law. When you consistently recognize abundance in consciousness, abundance appears in experience. When you acknowledge wholeness within, healing manifests outwardly. When you rest in peace internally, circumstances gradually align with that peace. This isn't instant or guaranteed in specific forms. You might recognize financial abundance in consciousness, and it could appear as a job, an unexpected gift, a business opportunity, or reduced expenses. You don't control the form. You recognize the consciousness. The infinite intelligence that fulfills itself in you knows the perfect way to manifest in your specific situation. The key is releasing attachment to specific outcomes while remaining anchored in recognition of fulfillment. This is the spiritual maturity Jesus demonstrated. He didn't demand things happen in a particular way. He recognized the Father's fulfillment in consciousness and allowed it to express through whatever form was perfect. This same spiritual intelligence is available to you right now. So here's your invitation into the life Jesus demonstrated and Joel Goldsmith taught. Stop seeking fulfillment in external circumstances, achievements, relationships, or possessions. Start recognizing that all is already fulfilled in your spiritual consciousness. This isn't denying practical reality or rejecting appropriate action. It's discovering the source of all good within yourself. Practice this recognition consistently. When you wake, throughout your day, when facing challenges, before sleeping. All is fulfilled in me. Not as a magical incantation, but as a recognition of spiritual truth. Let this awareness gradually restructure your consciousness from seeking to acknowledging, from lacking to recognizing, from striving to resting in what already is. Your life will transform, not because you're trying to make things happen, but because you're removing the barriers to recognizing what's already present. Joel spent his life teaching this one principle in countless ways. You are the fulfilled consciousness of God expressing as individual being. Everything you seek is already present within you, waiting only to be recognized. This is what Jesus meant by, all is fulfilled in me, and it's your spiritual inheritance right now. If your understanding of spiritual fulfillment expanded through these Joel Goldsmith teachings, like this video to help others discover this consciousness, subscribe for more transformative mystical Christian wisdom, and comment, all is fulfilled in me, to confirm your recognition of this truth. Jesus spoke two words that hold the entire secret of spiritual power. Not a prayer, not a request, not a hope. Just two words. I am. Most people rush past this statement thinking it's just a name, but Joel Goldsmith discovered something that changes everything. When you truly understand why Jesus said, "I am," you unlock a consciousness that dissolves problems without effort. The mystery isn't in the words themselves. It's in the consciousness behind them. When Jesus said, "I am," he wasn't identifying with a body or a personality. He was declaring the presence of God as his only identity. This wasn't philosophy. This was the ultimate healing principle that transformed water into wine and raised the dead through pure consciousness. You've been taught to seek God outside yourself, to pray to something distant, to beg for what you need. But the I Am reveals a truth that shatters every limitation. God isn't something you reach for. God is the very I that you are. When you grasp this, everything in your life begins to shift. Not because you're doing more, but because you're understanding what has always been true. Joel Goldsmith spent decades discovering what Jesus really meant. He found that I am isn't a statement about your human self. It's not about your personality, your history, or your circumstances. The I am is the infinite presence expressing as you right now. When you say I am with spiritual awareness, you're not speaking as a limited person. You're speaking as consciousness itself. Think about how you use these words daily. I am sick, I am broke, I am afraid. Every time you attach I am to a condition, you're giving power to illusion. You're identifying the infinite with the finite. You're claiming that God, the I of your being, is limited by circumstances. This is the root of all suffering. Not what happens to you, but what you claim I am is. Jesus never said I am sick or I am lacking. He said I am the resurrection. I am the light. I am the way. He was identifying with the infinite, not the condition. When you begin to use I am only with truth, with what is eternal and unchanging, your entire experience begins to mirror that consciousness. This isn't positive thinking. This is spiritual law. Here's what Joel discovered that few teachers reveal. The I am isn't something you create or develop. It already is. You don't become the I am through practice or achievement. You simply stop identifying with what you are not. Every problem in your life exists because you've forgotten that the I that you are is God expressing. Not will be. Not can become. Yes, when you're facing illness, the temptation is to say, I am sick and I need healing. But the moment you claim I am sick, you've denied the truth of your being. The I that you are cannot be sick because that I is infinite spirit. The body may show symptoms, yes, but that's not the I. The I am is perfect, whole, complete. When you rest in this knowing, healing happens naturally. The same applies to every area of life. Not I am poor and need supply, but I am the infinite abundance of God made visible. Not I am alone and need love, but I am the presence of love itself. This isn't denial of circumstances. This is recognition of what lies beneath all circumstances. The eternal I that is your true identity, unchanged by any condition that appears in the world of form. Most spiritual teachings give you something to do. Visualize, affirm, manifest. But Jesus revealed something far more powerful. He revealed a state of being. I am is not an action. It's a recognition. When you truly understand this, you stop trying to get things from God and start realizing that God is already the substance of your being, expressing as your experience. This is why Joel taught that healing isn't about changing conditions, it's about changing identity. When you know yourself as the I am, the infinite presence, conditions have no choice but to align with that truth. You don't heal the body. You recognize that the I of your being was never sick. You don't create abundance. You recognize that the I am is infinite supply. Here's the transformation that happens when this understanding deepens. You stop living from the level of effect. You stop reacting to appearances. You rest in the I am, and from that resting place, every need is met, every problem dissolves, every fear vanishes. Not through struggle, but through spiritual recognition. This is the secret Jesus lived. This is what Joel spent his life teaching. Let me share what happened to a woman named Margaret who attended Joel's classes in the 1950s. She'd suffered with chronic pain for 7 years, Doctors found nothing wrong. She'd tried every treatment, every therapy, every healing method available. Nothing worked. She came to Joel desperate, exhausted, and ready to give up hope entirely. Joel didn't pray for her. He didn't treat her condition. He simply asked her one question: "Who is the I that says I am in pain?" Margaret was confused at first. She said, "I am. I'm the one suffering." But Joel pressed deeper. "Is the I am you speak of capable of pain? Can infinite spirit hurt? Can God suffer?" She sat in silence for nearly 20 minutes. Then something shifted in her consciousness. She realized she'd been identifying her true self, the I am, with a body and its sensations. The pain didn't belong to the I that she was. It belonged to a false sense of identity. Within 3 weeks, the pain began to diminish. Within 2 months, it was completely gone. Not because she fought it, but because she stopped claiming it as her identity. A businessman named Robert used this same principle with his failing company. He was on the edge of bankruptcy, drowning in debt, watching everything he'd built crumble. Every morning he'd wake up thinking, "I am failing, I am losing everything." His prayers were desperate pleas for God to save his business, to send customers, to provide a miracle from outside himself. Then Robert heard Joel speak about the I am. He realized he'd been claiming lack as his identity. He'd been saying, "I am broke," instead of recognizing that the I of his being is infinite supply. He began a daily practice. Every morning before looking at numbers or emails, he'd sit quietly and recognize, "I am is the abundance of God. I am is infinite resource. I am is divine intelligence expressing." It took 4 months, not 4 days. But slowly, ideas came. Connections appeared. Opportunities opened that had been invisible before. His business didn't just survive. It transformed into something more aligned with his true purpose. The change wasn't in his circumstances first. It was in his consciousness. When he stopped identifying with lack, abundance had space to flow through him naturally. Joel worked with a mother whose son was addicted to drugs. She'd prayed for years. She'd begged God to change her son. She'd tried intervention, therapy, tough love, enabling, everything. Nothing worked. Her son kept using, kept disappearing, kept breaking her heart. She came to Joel exhausted, guilt-ridden, desperate for someone to fix her child. Joel told her something that shocked her. Stop praying for your son to change. Stop seeing him as an addict. Stop identifying him with his condition. Instead, recognize the truth. Your son's real identity is I am, the presence of God. That presence cannot be addicted. That presence is whole, free, and perfect right now. See only that truth, regardless of what appears. She practiced this for 6 months. Some days her son seemed worse. But she held to the truth of his being, not the appearance of his behavior. She stopped mothering the addiction and started recognizing the Christ. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, something shifted in him. He entered treatment on his own. He stayed. Today, years later, he's free. Not because she changed him, but because she stopped empowering the false identity. These stories aren't exceptions. They're examples of spiritual law in action. When you stop identifying with conditions and start identifying with the I am, your true nature, reality must conform to that recognition. This isn't magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is how consciousness works. What you claim as your identity becomes your experience. Joel taught that the great barrier to healing and transformation is personal sense. The belief that you are a separate person with personal problems needing personal solutions. But the I am has no personal problems. The I am is infinite, perfect, whole. When you rest in that identity, even for moments, the personal sense with all its troubles begins to dissolve. Here's the practice Joel gave his students. Throughout your day, whenever fear or lack or pain appears, pause. Ask yourself, who is experiencing this? Is it the I am, or is it the false sense of personal self? Then gently return to the truth. I am is the presence of God. I am is whole. I am is supplied. Don't fight the condition. Simply withdraw your identification from it. If these transformation stories inspire you and you're beginning to see the power of true identity, like this video to help others discover these teachings, subscribe for more. Joel Goldsmith Wisdom, and comment. Which story of consciousness transformation resonated most deeply with your own spiritual journey? Now let's go deeper into how you actually live from this consciousness. Understanding I am intellectually doesn't transform your life. You must practice it until it becomes your natural state of being. Joel called this practicing the presence. Not thinking about God, not praying to God, but recognizing that the I of your being is God, right here, right now, in this moment. Start with the smallest moments. When you wake up, before your mind fills with problems and tasks, recognize I am awake. Not a person waking to face another difficult day, but I am, infinite consciousness, expressing as this experience. When you eat, recognize I am sustained by infinite substance. When you work, recognize I am is the intelligence accomplishing this task. This isn't affirmation. Affirmations try to make something true. This is recognition of what already is true. The difference is profound. Affirmations come from lack, trying to create what you don't have. Recognition comes from wholeness, acknowledging what has always been present. One struggles, the other rests. One seeks, the other realizes. Joel taught a specific technique for moments of crisis or intense challenge. He called it the pause. When fear grips you, when pain overwhelms you, when circumstances seem impossible, you pause everything. You don't react. You don't try to solve. You don't panic. You pause and return to the I am. This simple act interrupts the false identity and opens space for truth. In the pause, you ask, what is the truth of my being right now? Not what appears, but what is eternally true. The truth is always the same. I am is the presence of God, untouched by any condition. I am is whole. I am is supplied. I am is safe. Not because circumstances prove it, but because this is the nature of infinite being expressing as you. A woman used this during a medical crisis. Her doctor found a mass and scheduled immediate surgery. Terror consumed her, but she remembered the pause. Every time fear arose, she stopped. She didn't deny the situation or fight the fear. She simply returned to truth. I am is perfect life. I am cannot be threatened. By the time of her pre-surgery scan, the mass had vanished completely. Another powerful practice Joel taught is releasing judgment. Every time you judge yourself or others, you're operating from personal sense, not I am consciousness. The I am doesn't judge because the I am recognizes only itself in all. When you see someone struggling, you're not seeing their true identity. You're seeing a false sense of separation appearing as a person with problems. This doesn't mean ignoring behavior or boundaries. It means seeing beyond the appearance to the truth. When someone wrongs you, the human reaction is anger, hurt, judgment. But from I am consciousness, you recognize this person's true identity is also I am, the presence of God. They've forgotten, just as you've forgotten at times. This recognition doesn't condone wrong action. It heals the consciousness behind it. Practice this with yourself first. When you fail, when you make mistakes, when you fall short of your ideals, stop the self-judgment. That judgment is personal sense attacking personal sense. Instead, return to truth. The I that you are never failed because the I am is perfect. The mistake happened in the dream of personal identity. Wake up to your real self and begin again from wholeness. The third essential practice is what Joel called impersonal supply. You've been taught that supply comes from jobs, people, investments, sources outside yourself. This creates fear. What if the source dries up? What if you lose the job? What if the person leaves? But when you understand that I am is infinite supply, you realize source is never outside you. Your employer isn't your source. Your clients aren't your source. Your investments aren't your source. I am is your source, and that source is infinite, never-ending, always flowing. The channels may change. One job may end and another begin. One stream of income may dry up while three others open. But the source, the I am, never diminishes, never fails, never runs out. Live from this knowing. When you pay bills, recognize, I am is infinite supply making itself visible. When you work, recognize, I am is the substance of my abundance. When you give, recognize, I am gives from infinite fullness, not from personal limitation. This consciousness attracts supply through unexpected channels, synchronistic opportunities, and ways you could never have planned or manipulated into being. But let's be honest about the challenges. Knowing this truth and living it consistently are different things. You'll have moments where you forget completely, where fear overwhelms the truth, where circumstances seem so real, so pressing, so urgent that I am consciousness feels like fantasy. Joel experienced this too. Every spiritual teacher has. This is normal. This is part of the journey. The first challenge is when nothing seems to change. You practice, you recognize, you identify as I am, and your circumstances remain the same. The illness continues. The lack persists. The problem doesn't dissolve. Your mind screams, this doesn't work. You're fooling yourself. You need to take action, to do something, to fix it the old way through human effort and struggle. Joel's answer was simple but not easy. Spiritual realization works in consciousness first, not in conditions. Sometimes the inner shift happens quickly and outer change follows immediately. Sometimes the inner work takes weeks or months of consistent practice before you see evidence in the physical. Your job isn't to make things happen. Your job is to know the truth and remain faithful to it, regardless of appearances. The second challenge is other people's reactions. When you start living from I am consciousness, you become different. You stop complaining. You stop participating in fear-based conversations. You stop agreeing that circumstances are terrible and hopeless. Some people will think you're in denial. Others will think you've joined a cult. Some will actively try to pull you back into agreement with limitation. A man in Joel's classes lost friends when he stopped engaging in their constant complaints about money, health, and politics. They thought he didn't care. They accused him of being cold, disconnected, superior. But he wasn't judging them. He simply couldn't participate in claiming lack and limitation as truth anymore. He had to choose, comfort of agreement or integrity of consciousness. This is your choice too. You cannot live in two worlds. You cannot claim I am is infinite abundance in meditation, and then spend your day agreeing with everyone that times are hard and money is scarce. You cannot recognize I am is perfect health in prayer, and then spend hours discussing symptoms and diseases. Choose your consciousness carefully, because it's choosing your experience. The third challenge is impatience. You want transformation now. You want healing today. You want abundance this week. But consciousness unfolds at its own pace. A seed doesn't become a tree overnight. The invisible work happens first. Roots go deep before the shoot appears above ground. Your consistent practice is the root work. Trust that something is happening even when you see no evidence. Joel worked with a man whose business was failing for 2 years. He practiced I am consciousness every day. Some months seemed better, then worse again. He was tempted to give up the practice and return to human struggle and manipulation, but something kept him faithful. In the 3rd year, everything shifted, not gradually but suddenly. Opportunities exploded, money flowed, the business tripled. Later he understood why. The first 2 years were preparing his consciousness. He was learning to truly rest in I am instead of anxiously trying to make things happen from personal effort. When his consciousness was finally clear, when he truly knew himself as infinite supply, the outer world had no choice but to mirror that knowing. The delay wasn't punishment. It was preparation for a blessing his old consciousness couldn't have sustained. The fourth challenge is mixing practices. You try I am consciousness for a week. Nothing happens fast enough, so you add visualization techniques, then affirmations, then manifestation rituals. Then you ask others to pray for you. You mix truth with methods that operate from lack. This creates confusion in consciousness. You're saying I am is complete while simultaneously acting like you need something outside yourself. Joel was firm about this. You cannot serve two masters. Either I am is your sufficiency or it isn't. Either God is the substance of your being or you need to manipulate conditions. Either you trust spiritual identity or you trust human effort. Mixing the two cancels both. Choose one path and commit to it completely, especially when fear screams at you to hedge your bets. Here's how to navigate these challenges. First, give yourself grace. You're unlearning lifetimes of false identity. Second, return to truth without guilt when you forget. Third, find even one person who understands this consciousness. Joel's students supported each other through doubt. Fourth, measure progress by your inner peace, not outer conditions. Peace in the midst of challenge proves consciousness is shifting. If these insights about overcoming consciousness challenges speak to your heart and you're ready to commit to this path, like this video to support authentic spiritual teaching, subscribe for advanced practices in Joel Goldsmith wisdom, and comment, which challenge are you facing right now and ready to transform through I Am consciousness? Let's explore advanced applications of I Am consciousness in specific life areas. First, relationships. Most relationship problems come from seeking completion in another person. You feel incomplete, so you look for someone to fill the emptiness. You feel unloved, so you need someone to love you. But this places impossible demands on human relationships and guarantees disappointment. When you recognize I Am is infinite love, the nature of your being, everything changes. You're not seeking love. You're expressing the love you are. You don't need completion from another. You're already whole. Relationships become sharing of wholeness rather than trading of neediness. This doesn't mean you don't desire partnership. It means you desire it from fullness, not from lack. A woman practiced this after 3 failed marriages. She stopped looking for someone to make her happy and started recognizing I Am is infinite love and joy. For a year, she focused only on knowing herself as complete. Then she met someone. But this relationship was different. No desperation, no clinging, no fear of loss, just 2 whole people choosing to share life. That marriage is thriving 20 years later because it's built on truth, not need. Second, health. Medical treatment has its place, but I Am consciousness reveals something deeper. Your body isn't your identity. The I Am you are is pure spirit, perfect life, incapable of disease. This doesn't mean denying symptoms or refusing care. It means not identifying with the condition. You have a body showing symptoms. You are not those symptoms. The I that you are is eternally whole. Joel healed himself of tuberculosis through this understanding. Doctors said he had months to live, but he refused to claim the disease as his identity. He didn't fight it or fear it. He simply rested in the knowing, I Am is perfect life. The disease has nothing to do with my true identity. His body healed completely, and he lived decades beyond the doctor's prognosis, teaching this principle to thousands. Practice this with any health challenge. Don't say I am sick. Say the body is showing symptoms, but I Am is whole. Don't identify with the diagnosis. Recognize that diagnosis describes a condition in matter, but your true self is spirit, untouched by material conditions. Work with doctors, take medicine if needed, but know these are aids for the body. Your real healing comes from recognizing what you truly are. Third, your work and purpose. Most people see their job as how they survive. They trade time and energy for money. They endure work they hate because they need income. But I Am consciousness transforms work from survival into expression. The work you do becomes how infinite intelligence and creativity flow into visible form. Not work you must do, but work you're designed to do. When you recognize I Am is infinite intelligence, you stop forcing. You stop trying to figure everything out through limited human thinking. You pause, you recognize the I Am, and you allow ideas to flow from that infinite source. The right work finds you. The right opportunities appear. The right people cross your path, not through networking and manipulation, but through spiritual alignment. A teacher felt trapped in her job for 15 years. She knew she was meant for something else, but couldn't see what or how. She began practicing I Am consciousness. She stopped trying to plan her escape and started recognizing, I Am is divine intelligence knowing exactly what I'm here to express. Within 6 months, an opportunity appeared that was perfect. She transitioned naturally into work that fed her soul and doubled her income. Fourth, dealing with enemies or difficult people. Jesus said, love your enemies. Most think that's impossible or naive. But from I Am consciousness, it makes perfect sense. The person attacking you isn't your enemy. They're the infinite I Am who has forgotten their identity. When you see past their behavior to their true nature, you're not condoning wrong action. You're recognizing reality beneath appearance. This is practical, not sentimental. A man had a business partner who betrayed him, stole clients, spread lies. Human reaction is revenge, anger, hatred. But this man practiced I Am consciousness. He didn't pretend the betrayal didn't hurt. But he refused to see his partner as an enemy. He recognized, this person's true identity is I Am, just confused and operating from fear right now. The result was astonishing. As he held this consciousness, refusing to engage in hatred or revenge, something shifted. His former partner's schemes began to fail. The lies were exposed without the man saying a word. Within a year, the partner reached out and apologized, making full restitution. Not because the man manipulated or planned it, because consciousness operating from truth is more powerful than all human scheming operating from falsehood. Now we're ready for the ultimate integration. Living as I Am isn't something you do during meditation or when problems arise. It becomes your constant state. You wake as I Am. You walk as I Am. You work as I Am. You love as I Am. You rest as I Am. Every experience becomes the infinite expressing in finite form. You're no longer a person trying to be spiritual. You're spirit appearing as person. This doesn't make you perfect in behavior. You'll still make mistakes, still have preferences, still experience the full range of human emotion. But underneath it all, you know what you are. A wave still looks like a wave, moves like a wave, has its unique shape. But it never forgets its ocean. You're the wave that knows itself as the infinite sea, expressing in this particular form. Joel lived this way. People around him felt something different. Not superiority or detachment, but presence. When he entered a room, consciousness shifted. When he spoke, people's problems often dissolved without him directly addressing them. Why? Because he lived so consistently from I Am consciousness that it radiated from him, lifting everyone near him into that same recognition without words. You can live this way too, not by trying to be like Joel, not by imitating his words or methods, but by practicing what he taught until the I Am becomes your living reality. Start today, right now. Whatever you're facing, whatever challenge or fear or need is pressing on you, pause. Stop trying to solve it humanly. Stop seeing yourself as a person with a problem. Return to truth. Recognize, I Am is the only presence and power. I Am is whole. I Am is supplied. I Am is safe. I Am is loved. Not because conditions prove it, but because this is the eternal nature of being. You're not trying to become this. You're recognizing what you already are. This recognition isn't escape from reality. This recognition is reality. Everything else is the dream of separation appearing temporarily in consciousness. As this becomes your foundation, watch what happens. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, consistently, powerfully. Problems that seemed impossible begin to dissolve. Needs you struggled to meet begin to be fulfilled through unexpected channels. Relationships that were painful begin to heal or gracefully end. Health that was failing begins to restore. Not because you made it happen, because you stopped blocking it with false identity. Joel Goldsmith left you an incredible gift. Not a religion, not a set of rules, not a system to follow perfectly. He left you the key to the kingdom that Jesus taught. That key is recognizing what the words I am truly mean. When Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life, he wasn't claiming something special for himself alone. He was revealing what every human being truly is beneath the costume of personality. You are not your name. You are not your history. You are not your circumstances. You are not your body, your bank account, your relationships, your achievements, or your failures. All of these are experiences flowing through consciousness. But the I that is aware of all these experiences, the I that existed before any of these conditions appeared and will exist after they all change, that I is God expressing as your individuality. This is why Jesus could heal, could multiply loaves and fishes, could walk on water, could rise from death. Not because he was different from you in essence, because he knew what he was and never forgot it. He lived completely from I am consciousness. And he said, "These things you will do also, and greater things." Not might do if you're special. Will do when you understand what you are. This is your invitation and your destiny. So what happens when you truly understand why Jesus said, "I am"? Everything changes. Your problems don't all vanish in one moment. Your life doesn't become perfect tomorrow, but something shifts at the core of your being. You stop living from fear and lack. You stop identifying with conditions. You stop seeking outside yourself for what you already are. You rest in the infinite presence that you've always been. From this resting place, transformation flows naturally. Healing happens without effort. Supply appears without strain. Relationships align without manipulation. Purpose unfolds without forcing. Not because you've gained something new, but because you've remembered something ancient. You've remembered that the I of your being is the I of God, one infinite presence expressing uniquely as you. This is Joel Goldsmith's greatest teaching. This is Jesus' ultimate revelation. This is the secret hidden in plain sight in two simple words that contain all power, all healing, all supply, all love, all life. I am, not will be, not should be, not trying to be. Simply, eternally, completely, I am. Live from this knowing and watch your entire world transform from the inside out. If your understanding of spiritual identity has been transformed forever through these Joel Goldsmith teachings, like this video to help others discover their true nature. Subscribe for more profound consciousness wisdom, and comment, "I am," to claim your recognition of the infinite presence you truly are right now.